Chapter 39:28. Wang Xian looked at the incomparably huge space mirror before him. He moved and entered it directly. Wang! When he entered silently, he immediately saw 3 old men sitting cross-legged and cultivating in the space mirror. Every old man was at the peak of the venerable realm. Moreover, they were all spatial attribute cultivators. The 3 old men did not sense Wang Xian's arrival. Wang Xian stood there and looked at the slightly illusory space flower at the side. From it, Wang Xian could sense a surge of space energy. It was extremely beneficial for spatial attribute cultivators. Wang Xian hesitated for a moment before he waved his arm and shrouded the 3 old men with energy. Soul assimilation! He shouted softly, and all sorts of information entered his mind. Subsequently, Wang Xian waved his arm and plucked all the space flowers. Wang! He threw a soul return embryo fruit at the original position of the space flowers. Take it as a trade. Although it felt like a forced trade, the value of the soul return embryo fruit was much higher than these space flowers. These space flowers were only at the first order sovereign realm. Compared to the soul return embryo fruit, they were still a long way off. After obtaining some information, Wang Xian kept all the space flowers. With a jerk, he flew back to where he had come from. When he returned, he did not sense any changes in the mirror world. In fact, even the 3 old men who were sitting cross-legged and cultivating did not sense it at all. With this space flower, my cultivation speed will increase by a terrifying amount. Wang Xian looked at the space flowers and revealed a smile. Previously, he killed the king of the kingdom of magic and took away all the treasures in the treasury. However, there were not many spatial attribute treasures in the kingdom of magic. Moreover, in that kingdom of magic, the main attribute was fire. This space flower was the first spatial attribute treasure that Wang Xian had obtained. A first-order sovereign realm space flower was a great opportunity for a cultivator like the Eternal Swordsman. There were a total of 13 space flowers. Wang Xian took out a space flower and began to absorb it immediately. Wang! With such a treasure to aid his cultivation, Wang Xian's cultivation speed increased by more than 10 times. This brought a smile to his face. If he cultivated here for 50 years, it would be a piece of cake for him to advance 1 level. Ha! Time passed day by day. In the deepest part of the mirror world. Of the 3 old men cultivating, the old man in the middle frowned slightly as his heart skipped a beat. He immediately opened his eyes and looked to the side. Not good! When he saw that all the mirror flowers had disappeared not far away, his expression changed drastically. He couldn't help but let out a low growl. What happened? The other 2 elders immediately opened their eyes and looked to the side as if they sensed something. In the next second, their pupils shrank slightly, and a look of horror appeared on their faces. Where's the mirror flower? How was this possible? What about the mirror flower? An old man roared in disbelief. The mirror world was the only spatial treasure land in Mingyi's Sacred Academy. Moreover, in the depths of the mirror image world, there were over a dozen ruler-rank spatial-type mirror image flowers. A treasure of this level was a priceless treasure for their Mingyi Sacred Academy. To spatial swordsmen at the peak of the venerable realm like them, it was an extremely precious treasure. But now, they had all disappeared. They didn't even sense it before they disappeared. While this was unbelievable, it also made their scalps tingle. The mirror flower was able to disappear right beside them without a trace. Just what rank would it take to accomplish such a feat? To be able to make the mirror flower disappear without a trace, naturally, it could also make them die without a trace. At the thought of this, cold sweat appeared on their foreheads. There seems to be a fruit tree over there. At this time, they saw a fruit that was emitting special energy where the mirror flower used to be. They focused their eyes and looked at each other. Report this matter to the dean, Yi Futian ordered. Without any hesitation, they immediately reported this matter. This matter was too terrifying for them. Wang Xian didn't know how shocking it was for the experts of Mingyi's Sacred Academy that he had taken the mirror flower away. At this moment, he had absorbed the information of the 3 old men and learned more about the cultivation method of spatial type. This was of great use to him. As a result, his comprehension of space force had reached a powerful level. 1. After 30 years, Wang Xian easily broke through the shackles of rank 8 Eternal Swordsman and reached rank 9 Eternal Swordsman. At this stage, if he were to spar with Nie Yue and Su Xingruan, Wang Xian could defeat them in an instant. 1. He continued cultivating. After 20 years, Wang Xian suddenly felt a wave of energy spreading towards him. With a thought, he immediately transformed into a human form. Under the shroud of this energy, Wang Xian came to the outside. At the same time, Nie Yue and Su Xingruan were also beside him. Right in front of him was Mentor He. Clearly, the 50 years were up, and Mentor He had forcefully brought them out. Looks like I have to find a time to leave this place. Wang Xian's harvest this time was not bad. He had obtained some sovereign-level spatial treasures. His cultivation from now on would be much faster. He didn't intend to continue cultivating in Mingyi's Sacred Academy. Mingyi's Sacred Academy was still too weak compared to the other sacred academies, Sacred Grounds, and Forbidden Grounds. There were no more than 5 sovereign-level experts in the entire Sacred Academy. As for whether there were any second-order sovereigns, Wang Xian didn't know. All in all, Mingyi's Sacred Academy was weak. It was especially so for spatial attribute cultivators. The strongest were the 3 old men he had met. Pinnacle Universe Supremacies. Now that Wang Xian had absorbed their memories, he understood a lot about spatial attribute cultivation. If he wanted to continue his studies, he would go to a strong force. The prerequisite was that Wang Xian was prepared to go into seclusion for a period of time to raise his strength to the level of a universe supremacy. Let's go and meet the other outstanding disciples. Let's strive to get a good result. Mentor He looked at them and said with a smile. Yes, Mentor. The 3 of them nodded their heads. A wave of spatial energy shrouded them, and they disappeared in an instant. Rooftop. 10,000 kilometers above Mingyi's Sacred Academy. Here, a huge arena was suspended in the air. This was the arena that Mingyi's Sacred Academy opened once every 20,000 years. It was also the arena for the ranking of the disciples in Mingyi's Sacred Academy. Every competition was a grand event for all the cultivating students in Mingyi's Sacred Academy. A competition between geniuses. If one could make it to the top 10, he would receive the attention of the experts in Mingyi's Sacred Academy. It was a huge benefit. Chapter 39-29. The grand competition that happens once every 20,000 years has finally begun. I wonder who will be the champion today? Needless to say, it's 80% likely to be Goddess Iya. Senior Iya is currently the top student in our Mingyi Sacred College. With the space attribute and the strength of an Eternal Swordsman, no one will be a match for Goddess Iya. Almost. Goddess Iya is too strong. Everyone on the rankings is very strong. I wonder how many dark horses will appear today. There are dark horses every year. I wonder who will be the champion this year. On the rooftop of Mingyi Sacred College, the teachers and students of Mingyi Sacred College had all gathered around the central arena. As the student ranking competition that was held once every 20,000 years, this was an interesting event for all the students in their boring cultivation. Moreover, they might gain some inspiration and thoughts from watching the battles. Therefore, every time there was a student ranking competition, basically all the students would come to watch the competition. To those top students, this competition was undoubtedly a stage where they could amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. If they could achieve a good ranking, they would not only be rewarded handsomely, but they would also gain great fame. This would be of great benefit to their cultivation in the future. This competition is the same as the previous years. Only Eternal Swordsmen of rank 8 and above with the space attribute can participate. Swordsmen and magicians of other attributes have to be at the pinnacle of the Eternal Realm to participate. It will be an arena competition. The top 30 students of the Sacred College will guard the arena. Those who are confident can challenge the arena at any time. There is no limit to the number of times. At a corner of the rooftop, Mentor He said to Wang Xian and the rest. This rule was mainly meant for Wang Xian. There were no complicated rules for the ranking competition that was held once every 20,000 years in the Sacred College. It was just a simple competition. The top 30 students of the previous cohort would guard the arena while the other students would challenge them. Of course, the students in the arena could challenge those who were ranked higher than them. The competition would end when there were no more challengers. Every ranking competition would last for a few years. This kind of rule could also select the true experts. Wang Xian nodded his head slightly when he heard this straightforward competition method. Straightforward. The strong were the strong, and the weak were the weak. Nie Yue, all the best. Brother Run, all the best. Wang Xian, all the best. At this time, cheers came from the back. They were all Mentor He's students. There were more than 20,000 students in the Sacred Academy, but only 70 or 80 were qualified to participate in the ranking competition. They were students of the same teacher, so it was natural for them to support one of their own. Wang Xian looked back and nodded with a smile. In the surroundings, the instructors brought their outstanding students to the front. He waited quietly. Buzz! 10 minutes later, a figure appeared in the air above the sparring ring, quietly floating there. With a wave of his arm, a wave of energy spread out in all directions. When everyone saw this figure appear, they immediately quietened down. Buzz! Immediately after, the figure moved his palm, and a magic staff appeared in his hand. He tapped it lightly on the ground. Below the arena, a pyramid-like building made of space energy appeared beneath him. The entire illusory pyramid was divided into 30 compartments. There was a high platform in each compartment, and a young man stood on it. The group of young men scanned their surroundings indifferently. Their bodies exuded a strong sense of confidence. These were the top 30 students from the previous cohort. In the highest compartment, a girl in red tight-fitting training attire outlined her perfect curves. She had a faint smile on her exquisite face. She held a treasured sword in her hand and exuded a noble and arrogant aura. She was the champion of the previous cohort, Iya, the pinnacle eternal swordsman with the space attribute. Mingyu was recognized as the goddess of the Sacred Academy. The second and third places were also the supreme talents of the Sacred Academy. It's Goddess Iya. She's really beautiful. Yeah, she's just too beautiful. Xiao Yi is also very handsome. He's ranked second now. Perhaps he will challenge Iya's position. Wow, when can I stand there? In the surroundings, all the students looked at the 30 shining students with envy in their eyes. Only by standing at that position would they have the chance to step into the advanced academy of the Sacred Academy. The rules of the arena are the same as before. We will come here from other places. At this time, the figure in the sky spoke, and his voice was heard by every student. Let's go over. Mentor, he said to Wang Xian and the rest. Wang Xian and the rest nodded. They moved and arrived in front of the illusory pyramid on the arena. Students were also flying over from the surrounding areas. Wang Xian landed on the ground and looked around. There were about 50 of them. After the competition begins, we will spar one by one. If a student is challenged consecutively, there will be time to recover in the middle. The figure in the sky continued. Alright, let's start the challenge. I'll go first. I want to challenge Gu Cheng, who is ranked 30th. As soon as the figure in the sky finished his sentence, someone immediately issued a challenge. The first match began. Let's go, Wang Xian. We will just watch from the side. Nie Yue gestured to Wang Xian before flying towards the center. There were some seats in the center. The seats were divided into more than a dozen rows. The top few rows were occupied by some mentors. A competition of this level was a grand event for the students. However, to the mentors, it was just child's play. Many mentors and leaders of the Sacred Academy did not come. Only the mentors of the participating students were watching. There are advantages and disadvantages to challenging first. The advantage is that you can accumulate experience during this period. Of course, the disadvantage is that some of your trump cards and techniques might be exposed. Nie Yue said to Wang Xian after finding a seat and sitting down. Wang Xian nodded his head slightly. He wanted to take a look around and test his strength before leaving this place. He found a place to start his seclusion. Saint, why are you here? Ha, mentors, I'm here to take a look. Saint! Saint! At this moment, a voice came from behind. Ha! Nie Yue and Su Xinruan, who were beside him, were taken aback. They immediately looked behind. Space Saint Wu Qitian. Su Xinruan narrowed her eyes and spoke with a tinge of passion. Space Saint? Wang Xian adjusted his eyebrows slightly when he heard this name. He looked over and saw a young man. The young man wore a yellow robe and held a yellow sword in his hand. The sword was engraved with unique magical patterns. He had an imposing appearance with a tinge of arrogance. Chapter 39:30. Brother Tian. Yi greeted the young man in a yellow robe from the center of the balcony of Mingyi's Sacred Institute. Wu Qitian, the Space Saint of Mingyi's Sacred Institute. From this title, one could tell his identity and status. Around Wu Qitian, a group of students stood around him with faces full of flattery. Sister Yi, the competition has started. Is there anyone challenging you? Wu Qitian smiled and asked Yi. Brother Tian, not yet. It has just started. However, there should be people challenging me later on. Yi also shook her head with a smile. Hee, don't worry, Sister Yi. You have already mastered the sword technique I taught you. Although it's not invincible, it's invincible in Mingyi's Sacred Institute. Wu Qitian said confidently. Hee, I naturally believe that. After all, Brother Tian is just passing by on the path of invincibility. Yi nodded with a smile. Sister Yi will definitely be the champion in this competition. After all, she is under the guidance of our saint. That's for sure. Our saint has imparted his sword technique to Sister Yi, and she has mastered it completely. We might not see Sister Yi in the next competition. By then, Sister Yi will have entered an advanced academy. The surrounding students flattered him. Saint Su Xinruan, who was beside Wang Xian, looked over with anticipation and couldn't help but exclaim. Is he very powerful? Wang Xian looked at the Space Saint, who was surrounded by the crowd, and asked doubtfully. From what he could sense, this so-called Space Saint was only at the peak of the Void God Emperor realm. To him, this strength was a little weak. What do you think? He cultivated for more than 30 million years to reach the peak of the Eternal Sword Emperor realm. Along the way, he has always been invincible. Not to mention the weight of the title of saint. He is one of the 10 great saints of our Mingyi's Sacred Institute. God knows how long it will take for you to reach the level of the Space Saint. Perhaps you might never reach it. Su Xinruan said to Wang Xian coldly. Although the space attribute is very strong, it has always been known to be difficult to cultivate. At this moment, Nie Yu took a glance at Su Xinruan and whispered to Wang Xian. The Space Saint has reached such a level at the age of 30 million. His talent in cultivation of the space attribute is unparalleled within the Sacred College. I heard that the Space Saint is about to break through to the level of Sword Venerable of the universe. In the First Mystic Holy Institute, the title of Holy Son represents the apex of the First Mystic Holy Institute's 10 major attribute disciples. Every single one of them is a genius that only appears once every 100 million years. Upon hearing Nie Yue, Wang Xian nodded his head slightly. He had also obtained some information about the Son of God from some of the memories he had absorbed. Mingyi was one of the 10 saints of the Sacred Institute, 6 magicians and 4 swordsmen. They were of different attributes. In addition, there were also saints and saintesses in the other holy lands and forbidden lands of the sword and magic universe. Usually, this represented the strength of the younger generation of the Sacred Academy. Many saints and saintesses would go out to gain experience and make a name for themselves. Mingyi, although the Sacred Academy was considered a very weak Sacred Academy, it still had saint sons and saint daughters. Wang Xian nodded his head slightly and wasn't too bothered by it. He turned his attention to the arena in front of him. The battle had already begun. 2 students at the pinnacle of the Eternal Magician realm were fighting. In Wang Xian's view, the battle between magicians was somewhat similar to that between array sorcerers. The only difference was that a magician's casting time was much faster than a formation wizard's. Of course, their attack power would naturally be reduced. One was a fire element magician, the other a water element magician. Both parties' attacks were filled with immense power. Terrifying flames and water clashed in the air like living creatures. Fire dragons formed from flames, and water streams formed from water. Back and forth, the battle was extremely exciting. Wang Xian felt that this battle was much more exciting than the one in the Nine Origins universe. The Sword and Magic universe had an additional space element compared to the Nine Origins universe. However, their cultivation systems were slightly different. The experts here didn't have a god nation. This meant that they didn't need to upgrade their god nations to become stronger. From this point, it seemed that the Nine Origins universe had a huge advantage. In fact, the Nine Origins universe was one of the stronger forces among the other universes because of the existence of a god nation. The descent of a god nation could greatly increase one's strength. The most important thing was the means to protect one's life. In a battle between experts, the most important thing was the means to protect one's life. The disciples of the Sword and Magic universe didn't have such abilities. If they weren't a match, they might be killed by someone of the same level. This also made the attacking techniques and means of the Sword and Magic universe more intricate than the Nine Origins universe. This was because if one wasn't intricate and didn't work hard to improve, it would be easier for them to fall. The battle lasted for an entire day. In the end, the challenger didn't succeed. The student ranked 30th successfully defended the arena. Next, the challenges continued. One by one, the students challenged the ranked students. The battles broadened Wang Xian's horizons. Time passed day by day. Wang Xian had been watching for half a year. Beside him, Su Ruanxin and Nie Yue had both challenged. Currently, Nie Yue had challenged the 27th ranked student and succeeded. On the other hand, Su Ruanxin had challenged the 30th ranked student and failed. Challenge failed. Next! As time passed, the challenges weren't as intense as the beginning. Some of the students also had a better understanding of each other's strength. Wang Xian looked around and stood up slowly. Oh? Student Wang Xian wants to challenge? Given your strength, you should be able to get into the top 20, right? Nie Yue said with a smile when she saw Wang Xian getting ready to challenge. Yeah, let's do it. Wang Xian nodded. Since he was here, he might as well have some fun. With a shift of his body, he teleported and landed at the highest position. After every battle, the illusory pyramid would appear. The challenger only needed to fly to a room with a name on the pyramid to challenge that student. Wang Xian's illusory figure gradually solidified at the highest position. Naturally, he had to challenge the strongest disciple of the Sacred Institute. Iya, the pinnacle eternal swordsman with space attribute. Since the start of the battle, no one had challenged Iya, who was in first place. This also represented Iya's prestige and strength. Huh! What? When Nie Yue saw Wang Xian appearing at the top, she was slightly taken aback as she revealed a shocked expression. Is he crazy? He actually wants to challenge Iya, who is in first place. Does he think he can fight someone 2 levels above him? Su Xinruan had been paying attention to Wang Xian when he was preparing to challenge. When he saw Wang Xian standing at the highest position, his expression froze. Chapter 39-31. Hey, look! Someone is challenging Iya, and it's an unfamiliar student. Who is he? I've never seen him before. He doesn't seem to be famous in our Mingyi Sacred College. Does he have the confidence and strength to challenge Iya? Who is he? He's not even in the top 30, and yet he dares to challenge Iya. Is he trying to get famous? When Wang Xian stood at the top, everyone was shocked. An unfamiliar face challenging Iya of Mingyi Sacred College was beyond everyone's expectation. Did he really have the strength, or was he trying to get famous? Sister Iya, someone is challenging you? Wu Qitian, the space saint, who was in the center, looked ahead with a smile as he spoke to Iya. I didn't expect someone to challenge me so soon. It's time for some exercise. Iya replied with a smile. A rank 9 eternal swordsman dares to challenge you? He's really overestimating himself. Wu Qitian looked ahead, shook his head, and spoke. Just a rank 9 eternal swordsman? How dare he challenge me with such strength? How boring. Disappointing. When Iya heard this, she raised her eyebrows slightly and revealed a look of disappointment. Sister Iya, you can easily kill someone like him. Wu Qitian shook his head. I have to accept the challenge. Brother Tian, I'll go over and kill him. Iya smiled. With a swift move, she appeared in front of Wang Xian instantly. Wang Xian, challenge! Wang Xian cupped his fists when he saw Iya flying over. A rank 9 eternal swordsman is challenging me. Don't you think you're overestimating yourself? Iya sized Wang Xian up as she stood there without moving an inch. Huh! Rank 9 eternal swordsman? Space attribute? It can't be. He's one level lower than Iya, and yet he dares to challenge me? Although a space swordsman can challenge someone of a higher level, it depends on the opponent. Iya is at the pinnacle of the eternal swordsman realm, and one of the best of the space attribute. Is he looking for a beating? They're not on the same level. When the surrounding students heard this, a look of astonishment appeared on their faces. A rank 9 eternal swordsman space cultivator challenging Iya? They were not on the same level. Please enlighten me. Upon hearing her words, Wang Xian's expression remained unchanged. With a flick of his palm, a sharp sword appeared in his hand. Interesting, but the gap is too big. The expert from Mingyi Sacred College, who was hovering in the air, waved his arm and shrouded Iya and Wang Xian with a surge of energy. As long as there was a slight crack in the energy in Wang Xian's body, it would mean failure. As for the energy on Iya's body, it would only be considered a loss if it completely collapsed. This was because their defenses weren't on the same level. This Wang Xian has actually broken through to the rank 9 eternal swordsman realm. I can't believe he broke through so quickly. When Ye Yue heard Iya's words, she revealed a shocked expression. When Wang Xian was a rank 8 eternal swordsman, he was already able to defeat her. Perhaps Wang Xian could really defeat Iya. Although he has broken through, Iya is not an ordinary peak eternal swordsman. Iya cultivates the Space Saint's sword technique. Seeing Wang Xian's breakthrough, Su Xinuan's expression changed slightly. However, he quickly spoke up. Nye Yu's eyes flashed. Iya wasn't a simple pinnacle eternal swordsman expert. However, she felt that Wang Xian wasn't simple either. He was extremely mysterious. When they were fighting, she could feel that Wang Xian hadn't unleashed his full strength. Begin. At this time, the expert from Mingyi Sacred Institute waved his arm, and the illusory pyramid-shaped shadow disappeared. With your strength, you're not qualified to fight with me. Get lost. When Iya saw the start of the battle, she moved her palm, and a sharp sword appeared in her hand. She slashed at Wang Xian with a cold look in her eyes. She didn't care about Wang Xian at all. Moreover, she made her move immediately. Streaks of horrifying space swords shrouded Wang Xian. She was prepared to kill Wang Xian in an instant to intimidate those reckless challengers. I've also reached the pinnacle eternal swordsman realm, and I'm also of the space attribute. Yet I don't dare to challenge Iya. This guy is really arrogant. He's asking for trouble. I reckon he can be killed in an instant with one move. Among the top 30 students in the center, a student shook his head and said with disdain. In the arena ahead, Wang Xian saw Iya attacking him instantly. He moved and waved the long sword in his hand. Wang! At the same time, he teleported to the back. He teleported to 5 locations consecutively and arrived at the furthest back. TSK, do you think you can dodge by teleporting? Iya looked at Wang Xian with disdain when she saw him teleporting. Her swordsmanship could track him as long as he was within the coverage of her space domain. Wang! However, after teleporting 5 times, Wang Xian didn't continue to dodge. Instead, he waved his arm. At the 5 places that Iya had teleported to, sharp swords suddenly congealed and flew towards Iya's space swords. Bam, bam, bam! Intense collisions sounded. Iya's attacks were all blocked. Wang Xian waved his arm continuously, and sword graves formed around him. He stared at Iya, waved the sword in his hand, and stepped forward in the air. With every step he took, a sword grave was left around him. The sword graves were buried in the void. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't be able to sense them. Huh! He actually blocked my attack. Iya was slightly taken aback when she saw her attack being blocked. She stared at Wang Xian and said, "Seems like you have some strength. Looks like I'll have to get serious. That's all." As she spoke, she swung the sharp sword in her hand behind her. The space behind her began to tremble. The space seemed to shatter and formed many sharp swords. Soon, tens of thousands of sharp swords formed behind her. With a flash, she appeared 1,000 meters away from Wang Xian in an instant. At the same time, the densely packed space swords behind him teleported over and attacked Wang Xian from all directions. The moment Iya teleported, Wang Xian had already sensed her location. However, Wang Xian didn't move. At the instant when the tens of thousands of sharp swords attacked him, he shook the sword in his hand. Swoosh! At the position behind him, the scabbard, blade, and body of the sword began to form gradually. A sharp sword that was tens of thousands of meters long was formed. Break! Wang Xian slashed with the long sword in his hand. The 10,000-meter-long giant sword slashed towards Iya. Chapter 39-32, Rumble, Rumble. The 10,000-meter-long space sword slashed towards Iya with a terrifying aura. Iya could feel the aura of the huge sword. Her calm expression finally changed. She could feel the threat of death from the 10,000-meter-long sword. She froze and stopped in her tracks. The sharp swords met the 10,000-meter-long sword head-on. At the same time, her figure flashed, and she teleported to the back. The 10,000-meter-long swords lost control and their power was greatly reduced. The 10,000-meter-long sword slashed down and destroyed the power of the space swords. The 10,000-meter-long sword broke through Iya's attack and continued to attack her at a terrifying speed. Iya's expression turned cold. She waved her arm and sword shadows bombarded the sword. The 10,000-meter-long sword began to crumble gradually. That's it? Kill me in one move? Wang Xian looked at Iya and asked emotionlessly. He had a mocking look on his face. This girl wasn't strong, but she was rather arrogant. Kill me in one move? You! When Iya heard Wang Xian's words and saw his sarcastic expression, she was embarrassed. What she said just now was a slap to her face. What? Goddess Iya is being suppressed? How is that possible? It can't be. That Wang Xian is merely a rank 9 eternal swordsman, and yet he forced Iya to retreat? SSS, what's going on? What sword technique is that young man using? It looks powerful. At the same time, all the students of the Mingyi Sacred College who were watching the battle were shocked. Everyone thought it would be an easy battle for Goddess Iya. To their surprise, not only did she fail to suppress her opponent, but she was also forced to retreat. This was unbelievable. Oh? The mentors of the Mingyi Sacred College were shocked when they saw Wang Xian's sword technique. It was extremely difficult to fight someone of the same level. Especially against someone of the same level like Iya. This sword technique? The space saint, Wu Qitian, stared and adjusted his eyebrows. You have completely infuriated me. I'm going to show you my sword technique, Void Obliteration Sword. Iya stared coldly at Wang Xian with a stern look. With a wave of his hand, the sharp sword in his hand swung forward, and a wave of spatial energy fluctuated. His figure disappeared in an instant. When Wang Xian saw him attacking again, he had a serious look on his face. He stabbed in one direction, and his figure disappeared in an instant. Buzz! Iya instant shifted to a spot. The moment she appeared, she sensed an attack heading towards her. This caused her expression to freeze. You can actually sense where I teleport? She was surprised and used the sword in her hand to block the attack. Bam! After blocking the attack, he locked his gaze on Wang Xian. Void, spare me! She gave a light shout, and the surroundings shook. Numerous sharp swords revolved around her, forming a terrifying sword storm. Buzz! She gripped the sharp sword in her hand tightly, and the number of spatial swords around her increased. Soon, it formed a terrifying spatial sword storm tens of thousands of meters in size. The surrounding void let out strange sounds as the storm sword tore it apart. As the storm grew stronger, Iya circled in the middle. She stared at Wang Xian and flew towards him. Her speed was extremely fast. Not bad swordsmanship. While Iya was accumulating strength, Wang Xian waved the sharp sword in his hand continuously. A large number of sword catacombs gathered around him. The sword catacombs were like seeds that grew rapidly, forming sharp swords that pierced the clouds. Each sword catacomb was a horrifying sharp sword that rose. Gradually, more than 10 sharp swords that pierced the clouds appeared in front of Wang Xian, shielding him. Break! When Iya saw the dozen terrifying swords piercing through the clouds, her face was filled with a grave expression. She had not expected a rank 9 Eternal Swordsman student to be able to unleash such a powerful attack. The attack formed by the accumulation of more than 10 terrifying giant swords was already a threat to her. However, his void sword storm wasn't afraid of his opponent either. She brought along the horrifying power of the sword storm and attacked the sharp swords that pierced the clouds. Boom, boom, boom. Bam, bam, bam. Deafening collisions sounded. The horrifying sword storm continued to mince the giant swords. These giant swords crumbled rapidly and turned into the power of space. Hee hee. Wang Xian smiled when he saw the speed at which the swords crumbled. He waved the sharp swords in his hand rapidly and formed sword catacombs. The sword catacombs formed rapidly in front of him. This time, there were a total of 18 sword catacombs formed. When the 18 sword catacombs were formed, the dozen of giant swords in front of him had already been destroyed. The sword storm formed by Iya was still present. She floated in the middle and stared at Wang Xian from above. You have exceeded my expectations, but this is the end. Iya revealed a cold look in her eyes as she controlled the sword storm and continued to attack Wang Xian. Yes, it's time to end this. Wang Xian waved his arm, and the sword catacombs in front of him disappeared rapidly. Green peak sword formation, rise! Wang Xian bellowed. Rumble, rumble, rumble! In an instant, the 18 sword catacombs turned into several horrifying sword edges. Every sword edge exuded a horrifying aura. Most importantly, these 18 sword edges seemed to have formed some kind of powerful sword formation. Clang! 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 The 18 sword edges surrounded Iya in the middle, and it was accompanied by the cold sound of sharp swords. In the sky above the 18 sword edges, a horrifying sharp sword was formed. The sharp sword headed straight for Iya. What's this? How is this possible? The sudden sword edge and the sudden sharp sword in the sky caused Iya to reveal a look of horror. She could feel the power of the sharp sword, and her body trembled violently. Sword storm, rise! She raised the sharp sword in her hand, and the storm rotated to meet the sharp sword above. Boom! Everyone heard a violent roar. All the students' faces were filled with shock. The sharp sword fell from the sky, and the storm surged up to the sky. However, the surrounding 18 sword edges gradually glowed, and waves of energy were injected into them. The entire storm of swords was slowly suppressed. Bam, bam, bam! The sound of the sharp sword breaking reverberated continuously, and the sharp sword that fell from the sky did not weaken at all. Instead, it grew stronger. No! Iya, who was inside, was shocked when she saw this scene. Her face was filled with indignation and fear. Against this move, she could not do anything, and might even be killed. Chapter 39-33, 1. Alright, Iya is defeated! Iya's indignant roar reverberated in everyone's ears. an expert from the Mingyi Sacred Academy, looked at this scene with a gleam in his eyes. He then spoke directly. With a wave of his arm, the 18 blades dissipated instantly. Oh my god, Iya is defeated. She's really defeated? Defeated. Even our mentor Hong said that she's defeated. Iya is completely defeated. What kind of swordsmanship is that? To form 18 terrifying blades. That's way too strong. If not for Mentor Hong's organization, I reckon that terrifying attack could have killed Iya. Too strong. An Eternal Swordsman at the rank 9 Eternal Swordsman defeated a Pinnacle Eternal Swordsman. What kind of swordsmanship is that? Who exactly is that Wang Xian? The biggest dark horse of this cohort has appeared. The speed of the battle was similar to what we expected. But who would have thought that Iya would be the one defeated? Such a terrifying attack, such powerful strength. Is it something that an Eternal Realm student can withstand? Voices of astonishment rang continuously as all the students looked at the scene in disbelief. No one would have thought that this would be the result. Even though Wang Xian had suppressed Iya at the beginning. Moreover, the battle ended so quickly and Iya was defeated so quickly. This shocked everyone even more. The biggest dark horse of this cohort had appeared. Moreover, he defeated Iya in a way that surpassed his cultivation level. Unimaginable. His swordsmanship is definitely horrifying. In the middle of the viewing platform, Space Saint, Wu Qitian, stared at Wang Xian with a tinge of astonishment. Indeed, in the face of such a sword technique, even he felt very amazed. The swordsmanship that he had cultivated had always been invincible since he started cultivating it. No one at the same level as him was his match. Iya had received his teachings. Because of his guidance, even when he was at the pinnacle of the Eternal Swordsman, he did not think that he was stronger than Iya. Yet, a rank 9 Eternal Swordsman student had defeated Iya. What did this mean? This meant that the swordsmanship that Wang Xian had mastered was of a much higher level than his. One should know that his own swordsmanship was obtained by chance. In Mingyi Sacred College, it was considered a top-notch swordsmanship. Wang Xian won. Not bad, not bad. His swordsmanship is strong. Teacher Hong, who was in the sky, continued to announce. He looked at Wang Xian with a tinge of surprise. Wang Xian smiled and cupped his fists. With a swift move, he teleported to the central observation platform. Congratulations, Wang Xian. I didn't expect you to be so awesome. When Ye Yuwei saw Wang Xian flying over, she looked at him in awe and congratulated him. Thank you. Wang Xian smiled and nodded. He wasn't surprised at all. Iya's abilities were slightly weaker than he had expected. He hadn't been pushed to his limits yet. At the side, Su Xinruan looked at Wang Xian with mixed emotions. He had not expected Wang Xian to win. Brother Tian, I lost. At the side, Iya flew from the stage to Wu Qitian's side and spoke with a face full of indignation. His swordsmanship is very strong. It's unheard of. As Wu Qitian spoke, his eyes fell on Wang Xian. Wang Xian, right? Come here for a moment. He opened his mouth and suddenly said. Wang Xian's voice also reached his ears. Don't tell me Lord Saint has taken a liking to Wang Xian? That's possible. After all, he won by leapfrogging. If Lord Saint has taken a liking to him, he'll be soaring to the sky. I'm so envious. When the surrounding students heard Saint Wu Qitian's words, they fixed their gazes on Wang Xian and were filled with envy. The title of Holy Son was very important in Mingyi Sacred Academy. Even the mentors would have to address him respectfully as Saint. Even in the entire Mingyi Sacred College, the status of the saint was comparable to the group of elders. One should know that the group of elders were at least level 8 or 9 universe venerables, or even at the pinnacle. If Lord Saint had taken a liking to him, he would be soaring to the sky. Huh! When Wang Xian heard Wu Qitian, he frowned slightly. Wang Xian, Lord Saint is calling for you. Hurry up and go over. This is Lord Saint we're talking about. Ye Yuwei quickly said to Wang Xian when she heard him. Wang Xian hesitated for a moment before flying to Wu Qitian's side. He cupped his fists and greeted. Lord Saint, your swordsmanship isn't bad. You have strong combat experience and great potential. Are you interested in following me? With my guidance in the future, your strength will improve much faster than it is now. Wu Qitian looked at Wang Xian and spoke with flickering eyes. Brother Tian! Before Wang Xian could reply, Iya opened her mouth and looked at Wu Qitian with an aggrieved expression. Wu Qitian looked at her and gestured to her. SSS, Lord Saint has taken a liking to Wang Xian to let him follow by his side. He'll soar to the sky. If he follows Lord Saint, he'll have Lord Saint as his backing and guidance in the future. His future will be bright. How envious. He's the luckiest dark horse this year. When the disciples in the top 30 heard this, they couldn't help but sigh with envy. When Wu Qitian heard the envious voices around him, he revealed a faint smile. Recruiting an eternal level student was a great opportunity for any student. No one would reject it. I'm sorry, Saint. I'm used to cultivating alone. However, at this moment, Wang Xian's words entered his ears, and the smile on his face froze. Oh? Why? You're still unwilling? I won't mistreat you if you follow me. The saint frowned slightly and stared at him. I'm sorry. Wang Xian shook his head. Forget it if you don't agree. Your swordsmanship isn't bad. I wonder if I can discuss it with you. Of course, I won't mistreat you. I'll provide all the resources you need to cultivate to the level of Sword Emperor. Moreover, I'll give you a portion of the swordsmanship that I'm cultivating for you to study. Seeing Wang Xian rejecting him again, Wu Qitian remained silent for a few seconds before continuing. You're forbidden from imparting your family's swordsmanship to others. Is there anything else, Saint? When Wang Xian heard this, his eyes flickered as he stared at him calmly. Haha, it's nothing. When Wu Qitian heard Wang Xian rejecting him again, a cold glint flashed in his eyes. However, he laughed and shook his head. I feel that you have unlimited potential in the future. Let's go and have a drink or two. Is that all right with you? Wu Qitian took 2 steps forward and patted him on the shoulder. At the same time, a surge of spatial force surged into Wang Xian's body. This spatial force began to dominate Wang Xian's body. Chapter 39-34. Her? To think that Lord Saint would invite Wang Xian for a drink. How much does Lord Saint value him? I'm so envious. However, Wang Xian rejected all of the saint's conditions. This is a little. He rejected the saint twice, but the saint didn't hold it against him. He even values him so much. TSK. I'm so envious. When the surrounding students saw Wu Qitian patting Wang Xian's shoulder, they were filled with envy. This was the space saint. He rejected the saint twice and was still valued so highly. What a blessing. However, at this moment, Wang Xian sensed a wave of space force entering his body. This force was trying to dominate and control his body. In fact, he couldn't even speak under the influence of this space force. Go! Wu Qitian shouted again with a smile on his face. At this moment, Wang Xian sensed a wave of space force enveloping him and trying to take him away. Wang Xian sensed everything that Wu Qitian was doing to him. He lifted his head slowly and stared at Wu Qitian with a cold look in his eyes. Wu Qitian, what are you trying to do to me? Are you trying to confine my body with space force? Wang Xian said coldly to him. Her? Wang Xian's sudden words stunned Wu Qitian, who was beside him. At the same time, the surrounding students were also paying attention to them. When they heard Wang Xian's words, they were taken aback and astonished. What's going on? What did he mean? What do you mean? What are you talking about? Wu Qitian's eyes flashed with surprise. Following which, his face turned cold as he stared at Wang Xian. An intimidating aura gradually surged from his body. Wu Qitian, you should know what I mean. What are you trying to do by invading my body with space force? Wang Xian stared at Wu Qitian and said plainly. Brat, what nonsense are you talking about? I saw that your talent was not bad, so I wanted to give you a few pointers, but you actually said that I used the power of space to invade your body. Ha ha, how laughable. With your strength, if I really used the power of space to invade your body, would you still be able to speak? You can still move? Wu Qitian laughed out loud and stared coldly at Wang Xian. Brat, do you know the consequences of maligning me? What's going on? Then why did Wang Xian suddenly wish for Lord Saint? No way, what's going on? Wang Xian said that the saint had invaded him with the power of space. Was this not a joke? What kind of strength does Lord Saint have? If we really invade him, can he still move? Yeah, isn't Wang Xian getting a little carried away? This is the biggest joke in the world. How strong is the Space Saint and how strong is he? He has wrongly accused Lord Saint. This kid is simply courting death. The surrounding students were all dumbfounded. What was going on? Wrongly accusing the Space Saint? Are you sure you're not courting death? Saint, what's going on? Seated at the back, the group of mentors also looked over. Mentor He also looked at Wang Xian with astonishment as he asked Wu Qitian. Mentor He, Wu Qitian invaded my body with the power of space in an attempt to control me. Mentors, you can check my body to see if there's any other energy invading. Wang Xian looked at Mentor He and the rest of the mentors. As he spoke, his eyes flickered. Mentor He's expression changed slightly when he heard Wang Xian's words. He looked at Wu Qitian. How dare you! If the saint invaded your body with energy, would you still be able to move? Brat, don't tell me you think you can accuse the saint just because you got first place? One of the mentors looked at Wang Xian and berated him in a deep voice with a cold expression. Mentor, you will know if I'm lying or not. Why would I accuse him for no reason? Wang Xian looked at that mentor calmly and replied. You have ulterior motives. I think you're courting death to slander me in public. At the side, Wu Qitian's eyes turned cold as a terrifying aura engulfed Wang Xian. Old He, this is your student. How dare he go against his superiors? Slandering the saint. Let the saint deal with this brat. I think we should just kill him. Among the mentors, 2 of them said coldly. One of them even wanted to kill Wang Xian. It was as though killing a student was as easy as stepping on an ant. In fact, an eternal swordsman was just like an ant to them. They could crush him to death easily. They could even turn him into ashes with a wave of their hands. An eternal swordsman had offended the saint. No matter who was in the right or wrong, this brat would have to pay the price. Moreover, the weak were in the wrong. This brat really dared to slander the saint. He's courting death. His bright future has been ruined by his own stupidity. He doesn't know what's good for him. He's courting death. When the surrounding students saw this scene, their eyes were filled with coldness and disdain. As for what Wang Xian had said and what he wanted them to verify, they had completely ignored it. Want to kill me? Wang Xian listened to the voices around him. When he heard the words of that mentor, a cold look flashed in his eyes. I came to Mingyi's sacred college to study. I don't want to get involved in anything, nor do I want to offend anyone. However, this doesn't mean that anyone can offend me. Do you know? Wang Xian said calmly as he looked at the mentor who wanted to kill him. Wang! His body shook slightly as he merged with the void divine dragon. Then, he extended his hand towards that mentor. Wang! When he extended his hand, the middle-aged mentor's body dissipated instantly. There was not the slightest sound, nor was there any energy bombardment. It was as though there was no sound. All that was left of that middle-aged mentor was his head. However, there was no movement from Wang Xian's casual gesture. However, that middle-aged mentor could feel a great horror befalling him. However, he felt an intense pain in his mind. Shock was written all over his face as he looked at his own body. However, at this moment, his body had disappeared. Arg! A horrifying shriek came from his mouth as he stared at Wang Xian in horror. You're courting death! Wang Xian uttered these words slowly, and waved his hand gently. In the next second, the middle-aged mentor's head disappeared completely. It was as though he had never existed in this world. Just like that, he disappeared without a trace. Chapter 39-35 SSS. The moment the middle-aged mentor's body disappeared. When his final scream reverberated through the sky, everyone in the surroundings was dumbfounded. They stared blankly at the student in front of them. This was a student who was like an ant to them. They were in a trance. But all of this was real. The mentors could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Their faces were filled with shock. Old Xian, he... One of the mentors opened his mouth and his expression kept changing. He looked at Wang Xian with fear in his eyes. How is this possible? The strength of this student, be careful. What are you trying to do? I'm warning you. This is our Mingyi Sacred College. What are you up to by sneaking into our college? At this time, the mentors also reacted. They immediately retreated to the surroundings and surrounded Wang Xian with cold expressions. You! At the side, the Space Saint was also staring at Wang Xian. His expression changed drastically. Just now, none of them sensed any energy surging out from Wang Xian. But he made a mentor vanish into thin air with ease. This scene was too horrifying. Wu Qitian's expression changed drastically. Without any hesitation, he immediately tried to teleport away. Wang! However, when he wanted to teleport, he found that he couldn't move at all. He couldn't teleport at all. What's going on? You! What did you do to me? Wu Qitian stared at Wang Xian with horror written all over his face. He growled at Wang Xian in a low voice with an unusually bitter expression. What did I do to you? Whatever you wanted to do to me just now, I'm doing to you now. Wang Xian stared at Wu Qitian with indifference in his eyes. Wu Qitian wanted to control him so that he could get the heavenly yuan swordplay from him. But it was a pity that he met Wang Xian. Wu Qitian looked at Wang Xian and shuddered. He growled in a low voice. This is the Mingyi Sacred College. Do you know the consequences of offending the Mingyi Sacred College? Do you know the consequences of offending me? When Wang Xian heard him, he smirked and asked back. What's going on? What's happening over there? Gulp, I don't know. What happened there? How did Wang Xian get into a conflict with the Space Saint and our mentors? What's going on? Where did that scream come from? And what's going on with that Wang Xian? This Wang Xian. What exactly is his strength? At the same time, all the students in the surroundings looked over in shock. A group of students who were closer to them looked over in horror. As for those students who were further away, they stood up one by one, their faces filled with astonishment. They still did not understand what had happened here. However, the mentor's terrifying aura soared into the sky, causing them to feel a trace of fear. Some ants among you deserve to die too. Wang Xian looked around and waved his arm. Buzz! A wave of energy swept out, and the students who had been shouting at him earlier, who were filled with malice towards him, disappeared in an instant. They had already dissipated from this universe. That included Iya. Stop, Wang Xian, stop. The instant disappearance of more than 10 students caused the expressions of the instructors to change again. When they saw this scene, their eyebrows twitched violently. They didn't even sense anything when those students disappeared in an instant. It was as though they had vanished into thin air. This made all the mentors feel a little terrified. They didn't even sense Wang Xian controlling the energy. Arg! So scary. When the students in the surroundings saw the dozen or so people suddenly disappear in a strange manner, their faces instantly revealed a horrified expression. Some of the more timid ones exclaimed and immediately fled. Is that Wang Xian an expert? SSS, what's going on? How dare that Wang Xian kill the students of our Mingyi Sacred College? This time, all the students around the arena saw this scene, and their faces were full of shock as they growled in a low voice. They looked at Wang Xian in disbelief. This dark horse that had just been born seemed a little different. The dozen or so students who had been eliminated were all in the top 30 of Mingyi Sacred Academy. Wang Xian, why did you enter our Mingyi Sacred College? Does our Mingyi Sacred College have a feud with you? The one who shouted for Wang Xian to stop was Mentor He. At this moment, he looked at Wang Xian with a changing expression and asked in a low voice again. Mentor I'm here purely to seek knowledge. However, there are people who don't know what's good for them and want to control me with the power of space. I'm just asking for fairness. However, since you can't give it to me, I'll have to do it myself. Wang Xian looked at Mentor and replied calmly. He really didn't want to be so high profile. After entering this universe of swords and magic, Wang Xian was prepared to cultivate to the level of the universe dominator. However, there were people who wanted to provoke him. Someone wanted to take advantage of him. Most importantly, Wang Xian had already given the Mingyi Sacred College a chance to settle this themselves. However, they didn't trust him and wanted to eliminate him. In that case, they shouldn't blame him. Boom! You killed our students in our Mingyi Sacred College. You don't know what's good for you. No matter what reason you have, don't think of leaving this place today. Just as Wang Xian finished his sentence, the entire sky changed. A huge white cloud suddenly shrouded the entire sky. Following this, a series of powerful auras descended upon the place. The moment Wang Xian eliminated a mentor, the mentors knew that Wang Xian was extremely mysterious and powerful. Therefore, they immediately sought help from the experts in the Sacred College. As a sacred college that ruled over thousands of magic nations, anyone who dared to kill and create trouble in their territory would have to pay the price in blood. This was where the prestige of the Sacred College lied. It wouldn't allow anyone to trample on it. The Guardians are here. They are the guardians of our Mingyi Sacred College. The Guardians are here. They are the experts who protect our Mingyi Sacred College. No matter what reason Wang Xian has, he must pay the price for killing people in our Mingyi Sacred College. Phew, since the Guardians are here, Wang Xian shouldn't be too presumptuous. When the mentors and students in the surroundings saw the arrival of the protector of the Sacred Institute, they heaved a sigh of relief. Each of the guardians in the college had the strength of a universe supremacy. With such strength, they could easily destroy a magic nation. Chapter 39-36 111 Swish, swish, swish. In the Mingyi Sacred Institute, a white cloud shrouded the entire sky above the arena. Accompanied by a cold and dignified voice, one figure after another slowly emerged from the white clouds. They looked down coldly and locked on to Wang Xian. There were more than 100 figures, and each of them contained a powerful aura. The protectors of the Sacred Institute weren't the only experts. There were more than 100 of them, and each of them was at least a rank 5 universe venerable. This was just the elementary school. The advanced school, which was also the old lair of the Mingyi Sacred Institute, had even more terrifying protectors. In fact, the school had always been overseen by a dean. The dean of the Sacred Institute was a truly powerful existence. He was the pillar of the entire Sacred Institute. However, under normal circumstances, the strength of the protectors around the Mingyi Sacred Institute was already at the top of the pyramid. In the surrounding magic nations, the strongest experts of many nations were only at the level of Void Sword Emperor and Void God Emperor. There weren't many magic nations that had universe venerables overseeing them. One could imagine what the might and strength of the protectors represented. Ha! Wang Xian raised an eyebrow as he looked at the hundreds of figures in the sky. More than 100 universe venerable level powerhouses locked their auras on him, their eyes filled with coldness. Protectors, save me! I'm being restrained by him. Wu Qitian's eyes lit up when he saw the group of protectors, and he immediately cried for help. To be able to restrain Wu Qitian Saint, it seems like your strength has reached the level of a universe venerable. Release Wu Qitian Saint before we discuss other matters. The old man in the middle of the group of protectors stared at Wang Xian as he spoke coldly. I'll release him just because you say so? Wang Xian chuckled and waved his hand at Wu Qitian. Wang! A wave of energy landed on Wu Qitian's limbs, and the terrifying destructive force instantly removed his limbs. Arg! The destructive force caused Wu Qitian to feel intense pain as he screamed in agony. Courting death. When one of the protectors saw this scene, his expression changed slightly. His figure moved and disappeared in an instant. A universe venerable level 6 spatial swordsman. His figure disappeared, and in the next second, he appeared beside Wu Qitian. The moment he appeared, the power of space immediately enveloped Wu Qitian, trying to save him. "You're the one courting death!" Wang Xian was disdainful when he saw the guardian daring to teleport over. He waved the long sword in his hand and attacked the protector directly. As the sharp sword slashed down, the protector's body immediately stiffened. Following that, a horrifying scene unfolded before Wu Qitian's eyes. The body of the protector who had teleported to his side slowly split open. His eyes widened as his vitality disappeared at a terrifying speed. Fear was written all over Wu Qitian's face when he saw that. "What?" He let out a wild roar. In the surroundings, there were over 100 protectors, instructors, and all of the students. When they saw Wang Xian killing a guardian instantly, their faces were filled with horror. A protector was instantly killed. This was a protector. They were the core experts of the Mingyi Sacred Institute. However, an existence of this level was instantly killed by the mysterious Wang Xian in a single move. What was Wang Xian's strength? How is this possible? That's our protector, an expert of the Mingyi Sacred Institute. How could he be killed? SSS, who is that Wang Xian? What's his strength? Is he the enemy of the Mingyi Sacred Institute? The Space Saint's son's limbs were severed by him, and one of his protectors was also killed by him. The surrounding students and instructors were in an uproar. The pupils of the 100 protectors constricted slightly. Killing an Eternal Swordsman rank 6 protector instantly. In the middle of the group of protectors, the old man stared at Wang Xian with a solemn expression. The rest of the protectors immediately took out their weapons. The magicians among them had already begun to gather their magic, ready to attack at any time. Wu Qitian wants to harm me. Mingyi's Sacred Institute, give me an explanation. Wang Xian looked at the group of protectors and said plainly. He needed a satisfactory answer for this matter. Everything started because of Wu Qitian. In order to resolve this matter, he needed the Mingyi Sacred Institute to make a statement. He needed the Mingyi Sacred Institute's attitude. We don't know what feud you have with the Mingyi Sacred Institute, but you'd better let go of our saint. The old man in the middle of the group of protectors stared at Wang Xian with a complicated expression and replied coldly. I hate threats. Upon hearing the old man's words, Wang Xian waved his arm and the sharp sword in his hand slashed towards the old man. Wang! Cough, cough, cough. The moment the sharp sword slashed across, the protector of the Mingyi Sacred Institute instantly felt the energy around him stagnate. This was followed by a great horror. He felt a surge of energy that cut him into two. Moreover, this horrifying energy caused his vitality to vanish rapidly. He had already seen death and knew his ending. Horror! Horror! Shock and indignation. What kind of existence did the Space Saint offend? At his level of cultivation, he could be resurrected with a drop of blood. However, this required the blood in his body to be active. It required his consciousness to be injected into it. However, Wang Xian's attack had instantly wiped out all his vitality. Even if it was a drop of blood, there was no energy in it. Another casual wave of the sword. Another protector was killed. And this old protector was obviously the leader of the group of protectors. An existence of this level was easily killed by Wang Xian. At this moment, the hundreds of protectors around were completely dumbfounded. Yes, they were completely dumbfounded. This old man was an expert at the rank 8 Universe Venerable Realm. He was one of the top experts in the elementary school. However, he was still killed by a sword without a sound. This scene was too horrifying to them. A rank 9 Universe Venerable expert would definitely not be able to do it. Even a pinnacle Universe Venerable expert might not be able to do it so easily. SSS. The hundreds of protectors trembled and their eyes were filled with fear. They knew that if the young man below wanted to kill all of them, he could easily kill all of them in an instant. The strength he displayed was too strong. Gulp. At this moment, Wu Qitian, who was imprisoned at the side with his limbs missing, was sweating profusely. He swallowed his saliva. His face was pale and his eyes were bloodshot. What kind of expert did he offend? Chapter 39-37. Give me an explanation in 3 seconds. Wang Xian exterminated the leader of the protectors easily. He turned to the rest of the protectors and spoke plainly. Senior, let's talk nicely. One of the protectors looked at Wang Xian and felt his scalp tingle. At this moment, they were completely behaving themselves. The mysterious young man in front of them was terrifyingly strong. The probability of him reaching the level of a universe lord was 70%. After all, they were in the Mingyi Sacred College. Only a universe lord would dare to kill someone here without any fear. There was also the second possibility. This mysterious young man's background wasn't simple. Wang Xian's expression didn't change when he heard the protector. He just looked at them quietly. The group of protectors exchanged glances when they saw this situation. All of them looked embarrassed. 3 seconds. If they couldn't give this mysterious young man an answer in 3 seconds, they would probably be attacked. Huff, Senior, you can settle this however you want. We'll listen to you. One of the protectors said to Wang Xian helplessly. Wang Xian's strength didn't allow them to resist. Moreover, they didn't have any Universe Lord experts around. Hence, they didn't dare to say anything drastic. In that case, I'll settle it myself. Wang Xian nodded his head plainly. He looked at Space Saint Wu Qitian coldly. If you dare to kill me, the Mingyi Sacred College won't let you off. My father won't let you off either. Wu Qitian stared at Wang Xian, his expression changing constantly as he bellowed. Killing you is like slaughtering a dog. Wang Xian looked at him, waved his arm, and injected a stream of energy into his body. Subsequently, Wu Qitian's divine tune faded gradually. Just you wait. Just you wait. Wu Qitian could feel his body disappearing slowly. He had a hideous look on his face. Hee hee. Wang Xian looked at him with a smile. Don't worry. I'll be looking for you soon. Very soon. Wu Qitian's expression changed slightly when he heard this. But soon, his body dissipated completely. The Space Saint's son is dead. He killed him. He killed the Space Saint's son in front of all the protectors. His strength is terrifying. He's not a simple student at all. He can even kill a Lord Protector, let alone our Lord Space Saint. All the mentors and students in the surroundings were shocked when they saw this scene. He had directly killed the saint. Even a group of protectors like them had no way to deal with it. Wu Qitian has a resurrection treasure. He's not completely dead yet. Take me to the divine Tao rite of the First Ming Sacred Institute. Wang Xian looked at the group of guardians and spoke plainly. To the sacred dojo? Upon hearing Wang Xian's words, the guardians narrowed their eyes again. He didn't leave immediately after killing the Space Saint. Instead, he sensed that the Space Saint had a resurrection treasure and was now heading to the Sacred Tao Arena. The Sacred Tao Plaza was the origin of the Mingyi Sacred Academy. That place contained all of the foundation of the First Ming Sacred Academy, as well as the most precious treasure trove. Now, he was actually going there to continue killing the Space Saint. What kind of strength and foundation did he have? He actually dared to be so arrogant, wanting to go to a sacred academy and kill a saint child? If Qin Wetian were to really be killed, the sacred academy would definitely lose a lot of face. They couldn't afford to be shamed. Senior, we have already informed the experts in our institute about this matter. The experts in our institute will talk to you, a guardian said to Wang Xian with a sullen face. Wang Xian's strength wasn't something they could contend with. Hence, they didn't dare to threaten him. I'll go there myself. Wang Xian looked in a direction. With a swift move, he flew over immediately. There was a teleportation array in the Junior Academy of the Sacred Academy that could bring him directly to the Advanced Academy. After absorbing the memories of the Space Saint, Wang Xian knew how to get there. In fact, Wang Xian had absorbed the memories of those experts in the mirror image realm. Hence, he had a good understanding of the Mingyi Sacred Academy. Let's go! When the group of guardians saw Wang Xian flying towards the center of the academy, their faces darkened and they followed closely behind. At the same time, the news quickly spread to the experts in the Sacred Institute. Mingyi Sacred Academy was a sacred academy. Even if it wasn't strong, it still had many universe supremacies. His reaction to this kind of crisis was still very fast. At the same time, the Advanced Academy was also informed of the situation. My gosh, he's going straight to Mingyi Sacred Institute. Perhaps the Space Saint really has some thoughts about this person, and that's why he was angered. Just who is he? How dare he be so unscrupulous? All the mentors and students in the surroundings were shocked to see Wang Xian heading to the Sage Dao ground of Mingyi Sacred College. Some students and teachers. He whispered. Instructor, he looked at the disappearing figure, and his expression changed slightly. He shook his head helplessly. Buzz! Wang Xian arrived at the location of the teleportation formation of Mingyi Sacred College and stepped into it. This teleportation array could directly reach the core of the Advanced Academy. This was a teleportation array used by the experts of the Mingyi Sacred Academy. Boom, boom, boom! The moment Wang Xian appeared, waves of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings. The experts of the Mingyi Sacred College stared coldly at Wang Xian with their staffs in their hands. Above him, numerous magical arrays had surrounded the area. The terrifying magical arrays were brewing their power. Wang Xian swept his gaze across them and revealed a calm expression. I'm here to kill Wu Qitian. I'll leave immediately after that. If the Mingyi Sacred College wants to stop me, you can try, he said to the experts around him. Tens of thousands of experts were all at the universe supremacy level. Wang Xian could sense that the few old men leading them had reached the pinnacle of the venerable realm. This force was already very strong for the Mingyi Sacred College. Their reaction time was also very fast. The moment they received the news, a team of guards from the Mingyi Sacred College had already organized and set up everything. However, to Wang Xian, this force was way too weak. It was so weak that they could be annihilated with a wave of his hand. They did not provoke Wang Xian, and Wang Xian had no intention of annihilating the entire Mingyi Sacred College. After annihilating Wu Qitian, he would leave. Moreover, from Wu Qitian's memory, he knew that Wu Qitian was prepared to force him to reveal the swordsmanship he cultivated. As for the outcome, it was up to Wang Xian to decide whether to kill him or let him go. Therefore, he would not let Wu Qitian go. Chapter 39-38. Aren't you being a little too arrogant? Wang Xian's declaration to take Wu Qitian's life made the surrounding experts from Mingyi Sacred College sullen. The leader, a pinnacle universe venerable, stared at Wang Xian and said coldly, I'll give you 3 seconds to consider. Wang Xian looked at the magician and continued speaking calmly. Humph. I really want to see who exactly is so arrogant as to dare to cause trouble and kill people in our first Ming Holy Institute. I really want to see who it is that dares to come to our first Ming Holy Institute and kill the son of Wu Jihong. As soon as Wang Xian finished his sentence, before the sorcerer could reply, an extremely cold voice was heard from the sky above. Wang! Following which, a figure appeared and stared at Wang Xian with murderous intent. It was a middle-aged man with surging spatial power. Wang Xian looked at him with glistening eyes. The middle-aged man stared at Wang Xian with intense murderous intent. Wu Jihong, the strongest spatial swordsman in Mingyi Sacred College and a pinnacle universe venerable. Because he was a spatial cultivator, he was invincible among his peers in terms of combat power and escaping ability. Even a first-order or second-order sovereign realm expert would find it difficult to kill him. Then I'll kill you first. Wang Xian's face turned cold when he saw Wu Qitian's father. With a wave of his arm, a 9-colored sword was formed and locked on to Wu Jihong. After the 9-colored sword was formed, it arrived in front of Wu Jihong in an instant. From the moment Wang Xian made his move to the moment the sword arrived in front of him, only a split second had passed. Wu Jihong didn't even have time to react. The surrounding experts from Mingyi Sacred College didn't even have time to react. Pfft! The sword pierced through Wu Jihong's body in an instant. The terrifying destructive power made him widen his eyes in horror. What? When the sword pierced through Wu Jihong, the surrounding experts from Mingyi Sacred College finally reacted. When they looked over, their eyes narrowed and their faces were filled with horror. Wu Jihong didn't even have time to react and was killed? How was this possible? One had to know that Wu Jihong was an invincible existence below the sovereign realm in the First Ming Holy Academy. A space attribute pinnacle realm warrior was instantly killed, he didn't even have time to react. In that case, what realm was this mysterious young man at? Ka. However, at this moment, Wu Jihong's body suddenly shattered like glass. His figure appeared at the side. At this moment, his face was extremely pale, and his face was filled with terror. He stared at Wang Xian in horror as cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Wang Xian continued to stare at him quietly with an indifferent look on his face. Buzz. At that moment, the nine-colored sword still hadn't disappeared, and was still floating in the air. When Wu Jihong's body reappeared, the sharp sword continued to attack. Damn it, how is this possible? Just what level of expert are you? Wu Jihong shouted in horror when he saw the sharp sword coming at him again. Buzz! This time, he reacted and instantly disappeared. However, the sharp sword continued to chase after him. Swoosh! 2 seconds later, the sharp sword flew over with a corpse. The corpse was Wu Jihong. Wang Xian's sharp sword carried the power of wind and thunder locking. This came from the unbeginning saint wings. When Wang Xian's unbeginning saint wings completely integrated, there was a scene of inheritance. In the scene, an incomparably powerful bird species expert killed a space attribute expert of the Void Universe's royal family. The powerful wind and thunder locking could track down and kill experts of the space attribute. Now, Wang Xian also had this ability. He could also easily kill experts of the space attribute. This. However, when the surrounding experts from the Mingyi Sacred Academy saw this scene, their faces were filled with shock. Wu Jihong, the strongest space attribute cultivator in the First Ming Holy Academy. A pinnacle existence among the universe warriors. His strength wasn't the strongest in the First Ming Holy Academy, nor had he reached the sovereign realm. However, because of his space attribute, even the sovereign realm of the First Ming Holy Academy couldn't kill him. But now, Wu Jihong was killed so easily. In fact, the other party had only used a single move, a sharp sword condensed from energy, to kill him. How terrifying was his strength! The crowd took a deep breath as they looked at Wang Xian with awe and respect. Senior, Wu Qitian has offended you. Our First Ming Holy Academy will give you an explanation. A Pinnacle Universe Venerable Realm expert, who was the leader, quickly explained to Wang Xian. At the same time, they also urgently passed some information about Wang Xian to the dean. Now, they were 100% sure that Wang Xian was at the level of a Universe Lord. And he wasn't an ordinary Universe Lord. Such strength was enough to clash with the First Ming Holy Academy. In fact, they might not even be a match for him. Facing an expert of this level was no longer something they could decide. The dean and the rest had to deal with it personally. Buzz. The moment the voice of the leading Pinnacle Supremacy landed, Mingyi's Sacred Academy sensed Wu Jihong's death and received the news. 3 Universe Lord Realm experts flew over. They appeared in the sky and looked at Wang Xian from afar, frowning as they tried to sense the situation. Ha! The dean and the rest are here! Greetings, Dean! The surrounding experts sensed something and immediately bowed to the 3 old men respectfully. My friend, can't we settle this peacefully? A dean from the First Ming Holy Academy looked at Wang Xian and asked with a frown. Wu Hongtian's death and Wang Xian's aura had made the 3 deans immediately determine that Wang Xian wasn't simple. Therefore, they didn't dare to offend him. You guys can try to stop him. However, you will have to pay with your life. Wang Xian looked at them and spoke calmly. His words made the faces of the 3 deans darken. Wang Xian was too domineering. However, Wang Xian's strength made them wary. To be able to kill Wu Jihong in a second, his strength was definitely not weaker than theirs. For such an enemy, they either had to kill him or not offend him. Otherwise, the outcome of the First Ming Holy Academy would be miserable. Phew, alright. Wu Qitian had ill intentions towards this friend. An expert can't be humiliated. You can do whatever you want with him. The three deans looked at each other with sullen faces and said helplessly. Chapter 39:39 An expert shouldn't be humiliated. Sometimes this sentence was not without reason. Now, the three deans of Mingyi Sacred College, who were in the Sovereign Realm, had no idea about Wang Xian's actual strength. However, they didn't dare to offend him completely. Even though Wang Xian had already killed some experts of Mingyi Sacred College. This was because if they couldn't eliminate Wang Xian, given Mingyi Sacred College's strength, they would offend a Sovereign Realm expert. This Sovereign Realm expert would bring great trouble to Mingyi Sacred College. Simply put, if a Sovereign Realm expert were to target the students and teachers of their college, they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. In fact, they might even fall into decline. Therefore, they lowered their heads to Wang Xian. They could only lower their heads. This was something that couldn't be helped. Most importantly, it was the Space Saint of Mingyi Sacred College who offended this existence first. Wu Qitian and his father should have been resurrected. Leave their lives to me, and I'll leave, Wang Xian said after hearing the three deans. Go! The three deans could only nod their heads helplessly. They reported to their subordinates. Bring Wu Qitian and Wu Jihong over. Yes. The experts immediately nodded in response. With a swift movement, they immediately flew towards the back. May I know where this friend is from? The dean in the middle looked at Wang Xian and couldn't help but ask as the subordinates went to bring Wu Qitian and Wu Jihong. From afar, Wang Xian replied plainly. The dean nodded his head and didn't ask any more questions, fearing that the conflict would intensify. No, no, no! Elder, save me, save me! At this time, a series of screams were heard. An extremely frail young man and a middle-aged man were brought over. They were Wu Qitian and Wu Jihong who were resurrected. However, they had offended someone they couldn't afford to offend. Mingyi Sacred College had completely given up on them. Swish! Wu Qitian and Wu Jihong were brought over and thrown towards Wang Xian. Mingyi and the other experts of the Sacred Academy looked on silently, their faces filled with helplessness. No, no, no! When Wu Qitian saw Wang Xian's figure, his face was filled with fear and despair. His body trembled violently as he looked at his father and the three deans, pleading for help. When Wu Jihong saw this, his body trembled violently and his face was filled with unwillingness. He didn't expect that the enemy he provoked would be so terrifying. He also understood that the Mingyi Sacred Academy had already given up on him and his father. He was filled with fear and dread towards Wang Xian. The strength of this mysterious young man was too strong. Bastard, how could you provoke such an existence? He couldn't help but berate his son. Just be careful in your next life. With a wave of his arm, a wave of energy shrouded them. Before he killed Wu Jihong, he absorbed his memories. At least your Mingyi Sacred Academy knows what's good for you. You've avoided the danger of destruction. After killing the two of them, Wang Xian turned to look at the three deans of Sacred College and the experts. With a move of his body, he flew into the distance. Boom! At this moment, Wang Xian exuded a faint pressure. Bam, bam, bam! Under this pressure, the bodies of the three deans floating in the air plummeted downwards. They fell heavily to the ground, and their faces were pale and aghast. Gulp! This? How is this possible? What kind of existence is he? The three deans exclaimed in horror. However, the surrounding universe supremacies were also lying on the ground, trembling violently. This was the terrifying pressure from the outside world, and their souls were shivering. It was only after a dozen seconds that they came back to their senses. Only then did the three presidents stand up with lingering fear in their hearts. They looked at each other. What level is this expert at? One of the deans couldn't help but growl. I don't know. He's definitely a fifth-order universe sovereign or above. Just his pressure alone can render us immobile. The other academy president was rather panic-stricken. How did that damned Wu Qitian provoke such an existence? The last dean said with a gloomy expression as he looked at his subordinates. Deans, according to the information we received, this mysterious expert is a student of our Mingyi Sacred College. He's an eternal swordsman with spatial attributes. No one expected him to be so terrifying. One of the subordinates said bitterly. Judging from the earlier pressure, if they hadn't given in today's matter, the entire Mingyi Sacred Academy would have been annihilated. A student from the junior academy? Space attribute? The three presidents narrowed their eyes slightly when they heard this. In that case, the mirror flower in the mirror world was taken by this person? It should be him. Maybe it's only him. However, the things he left behind. It's much more valuable than the mirror flower. The three deans spoke and shook their heads slightly. The continent is huge, and there's always a higher mountain. Compared to the central continent, this place is already very remote, but there's still such a terrifying expert roaming around. The dean in the center sighed slightly. Fear lingered in his heart. This time, it could be said that the Sacred Academy was lucky. He had met an expert who was not bloodthirsty. If they were to encounter someone who would annihilate an entire clan at the slightest disagreement, their Mingyi Sacred Academy would be finished. Let's find a place to cultivate. Flying out of the Sacred Academy, Wang Xian revealed a smile. Over the past 20,000 years, although Wang Xian's strength hadn't improved by much, his understanding of this universe had increased tremendously. Moreover, he still had the mirror flower at the sovereign level. These mirror flowers were sufficient for him to reach the universe supremacy realm very quickly. Wang Xian hovered in the air and flew forward according to the memories in his mind. After flying for a few days, he came to an ocean. This was a vast ocean. Based on the memories he had obtained, there were many magical beasts living in this ocean. In fact, there were even terrifying magical beasts at the universe lord level. As a divine dragon, Wang Xian still preferred places in the ocean. He was prepared to build a cave abode here and cultivate. After entering the ocean, Wang Xian swam towards the center. After flying for a week, he found a decent spot. With a wave of his arm, he built a cave abode. After which, Wang Xian took out the mirror flower and started cultivating. He wanted to use up all the mirror flower and raise his space attribute to the limit. Then, he would head to the center of this universe. Chapter 3940. As time passed, Wang Xian was at a cultivator in the ocean. 1,000,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. In front of Wang Xian, the mirror image flower gradually dissipated. As the last mirror image flower dissipated, Wang Xian opened his eyes and revealed a smile. It's a lot better than I expected, Wang Xian said as he sensed the space power in his body. His current realm had been elevated to the fifth-order universe venerable realm. It was considered very fast for him to reach such a level in 1,000,000 years. After all, every breakthrough required him to break through one shackle after another. This was partly due to the realm of Wang Xian's body and the memories he had absorbed from several space attribute experts. He had gained some knowledge about the convenience of cultivation. My improvement might be slower from now on. But if I can get a lot of resources, the speed of improvement shouldn't be too slow, Wang Xian said. Resources were the most important thing for universe cultivators. Resources represented opportunities and the speed of improvement. Without resources, no matter how high one's talent was, it would be useless. Wang Xian made a move and immediately flew upwards. As he flew out of the sea, he flew towards the center of the sword and sorcery land according to the memories in his mind. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Wang Xian adjusted the space power in his body and constantly performed teleportation. Teleportation was the biggest advantage of space cultivators. It was also the strongest point of space cultivators. Teleportation, appearing and disappearing. It was extremely terrifying. Wang Xian tried teleportation for a few hours. After he was completely familiar with it, he flew directly. At present, the speed of teleportation was not as fast as his own speed. It was especially so when he had the help of the Heaven Yuan creation treasure fragment. After flying for 10 years, Wang Xian began to use the teleportation formation for long-distance teleportation midway. After 1,000 years, Wang Xian finally arrived at the center of the sword and sorcery land. The center also represented the core of the universe and the place with the densest energy. In the center, it was easier to find all kinds of treasures and lands. Wang Xian sat quietly in a corner in an employment plaza, drinking tea. The employment plaza was a major feature of the sword and sorcery universe. Here, one could find all kinds of information and earn some resources. Of course, this was dependent on completing some missions or having enough magic stones. Other than that, one could also issue various missions here. Every city had this kind of employment plaza. Wang Xian sat there. With a wave of his arm, he used the soul assimilation technique to obtain all kinds of memories and information. No one knew. This was the fastest way for Wang Xian to gather information. Along the way, Wang Xian had a deep understanding of this universe. I heard that many experts from the sacred academies, holy lands, and forbidden lands have gone to the Void Moon. TSK, that place is really lively. Indeed. Many geniuses have gone there. After all, the Void Moon used to be an ancient battlefield. There are many treasures there. If you're lucky, you might be able to obtain some inheritance. This is definitely a treasure land for geniuses and chosens. After all, due to the Void Moon's uniqueness, even Universe Lord Realm powerhouses cannot enter. At this moment, the sounds of discussion could be heard from the surroundings. Wang Xian listened by the side without any change in his expression. Forbidden Land, Void Moon. Wang Xian had already heard of this news and understood a lot about it. Void Moon was the name of a forbidden area. This was a rather powerful forbidden ground. During its glory days, it had a few thousand universe ruler level experts. However, due to internal strife, the entire Void Moon was in ruins. All the experts died. Hence, the Void Moon had become a treasure land to the experts and disciples of the outside world. However, the Void Moon had a special characteristic. The reason why the Forbidden Land, Void Moon, was called Void Moon was because it was a special treasure land. In this treasure land, the creator of the Void Moon used some unknown method to prevent ruler realm experts from entering. Of course, this was limited to the experts of the outside world. For the Void Moon's sovereign realm experts, they could enter the Void world. However, the experts of the Void Moon were all dead. This also meant that only those below the ruler realm could enter the Void Moon. Originally, the Forbidden Land Void Moon used this method to protect other powerful forces from invasion. Now, it had become a treasure land for those below the ruler realm. However, this treasure land was also full of danger. Within the lair of a forbidden land, there would naturally be some defensive and offensive magical arrays. A magic array of this level would be fatal to anyone below the ruler realm. Opportunity and danger coexisted. This Void Moon had only opened in the last few hundred years, and it attracted a large number of forbidden lands of the Sacred Institute. A large number of geniuses and chosen had come. The central mainland is filled with geniuses and chosen. Sigh, how great would it be if I could become a genius chosen? A middle-aged man beside him couldn't help but sigh. Wang Xian's gaze swept across the area, then he moved and left. Just as the middle-aged man had said, the center of the sword and magic universe was filled with geniuses and chosen. In the sword and magic continent, 80% of the people were humans. This was also the reason why this universe was different from the Nine Origins universe. The Nine Origins universe had all kinds of bloodlines and physiques. Moreover, the experts of the powerful races had created powerful cultivation methods according to their bloodlines and physiques. Only the experts of their own race could cultivate. Bloodlines and physiques were more important in the Nine Origins universe. Without bloodlines and physiques, it was extremely difficult for the experts and disciples of the high-level races to reach the peak. The sword and magic universe was different. They had all kinds of cultivation methods. As long as they had them, they could cultivate. In comparison, the threshold was very low. Every living being, if they were lucky, had a chance to step into the ruler realm. This was also why the number of ruler realm experts in this universe was not small. At least according to the memories Wang Xian had obtained, there were not many ruler realm experts in this universe. However, Wang Xian felt that the number of ruler realm experts in this universe was much lower than in the Nine Origins universe. Bloodlines and physiques had their own benefits, and this kind of cultivation method also had its own benefits. Compared to ordinary living beings, the cultivation environment in the sword and magic universe was slightly better. There were indeed many geniuses and chosen here. However, these geniuses and chosen only addressed experts below the ruler realm as such. If there's a treasure land, I naturally have to go and take a look. Wang Xian prepared to go and take a look when he received news about the void moon. Chapter 39-41. Wang Xian lacked resources for his cultivation. A powerful forbidden land was something Wang Xian could take a look at. If he could get some resources, it would be of great benefit to his future cultivation. Moreover, the resources in a forbidden land might even be able to benefit Wang Xian's real body. After all, Wang Xian was only a fourth-order universe lord. The forbidden land, Moon of the Void, was high up in the sky. Before the Moon of the Void was destroyed, there was a teleportation array that could reach the outer area. But after it was destroyed, the teleportation array was destroyed and never rebuilt. In the universe of swords and magic, there was an end to the sky. At the end of the sky, there was a chaotic space. The Moon of the Void was suspended high up in the sky. Their lair was a huge meteorite in the shape of a crescent moon. The entire crescent moon was emitting a faint glow, and was unusually eye-catching in the sky. Around it, there were many buildings floating in the air around the crescent moon. But now, it looked like it was in ruins. It had become a wasteland. After receiving information about the Moon of the Void, it took him 5 years to get here. The central mainland was huge. Even at Wang Xian's full speed, it took him 10 days just to fly up into the sky. This was like living in the sky. This crescent moon is really huge. Wang Xian looked up at the core of the Moon of the Void, which was still emitting light, and murmured. The experts and disciples of the Moon of the Void called this core crescent moon as the Sacred Moon. At this moment, Wang Xian could vaguely see a large number of figures around the Sacred Moon. Some of them were even emitting a powerful aura. There are quite a number of Sovereign Realm experts. Wang Xian looked over and his eyes lit up. Looks like there are quite a number of sacred lands and forbidden lands here. Wang Xian thought to himself. He hid his main body and teleported forward. Soon, Wang Xian arrived below the Sacred Moon. At the Sacred Moon, the most eye-catching thing was a void gate. The void gate was located at the top of the Sacred Moon. The entire void gate was 1,000 meters wide. In fact, it could be considered very small. At this moment, there were many buildings gathered in front of the gate. There were buildings of various shapes. Some were like bridges, while others were like floating islands. There were also unique clouds. It was obvious that this was a different level of strength. Wang Xian swept his gaze across. Combining the information he had obtained in his mind, he knew that these forces were all from the various sacred grounds, forbidden grounds, and sacred institute. As for those Sovereign Realm experts, they were obviously experts from the Sacred Institute. Wang Xian had no idea why they were guarding this place. Huang Xiaolong's divine sense swept out, and he sensed that there were more than a dozen Sovereign Realm experts in each of the forces. The strongest among them had already reached the 6th Order Sovereign Realm. Even in the Nine Essences universe, he would be considered a core expert of one of the most powerful races. To think that a forbidden land would attract so many experts from the sacred academies and holy lands. It's definitely not as simple as a fortuitous encounter for their disciples. There must be some other reason behind this, said Zhang Xian. Wang Xian looked around and thought to himself. As for the reason, Wang Xian had no idea. Looking at the void gate, he could see disciples going in and out of it from time to time. Wang Xian looked around and pondered for a moment. Eventually, he decided to enter directly. He moved his body and came to the bottom of the void gate. At this moment, Wang Xian felt some eyes staring at him. He raised his eyebrows and was about to step into it. Wang! However, when he got closer, he felt the presence of a wave of energy. This surprised him slightly. He moved his body and hid his true body, separating from the void gate. On the other hand, Wang Xian's void divine dragon body continued to fly deeper. Wang! When he came to the void gate, Wang Xian's body entered easily. In an instant, a wave of majestic spatial energy came over. The spatial energy here is so abundant. Moreover, the area inside is much larger than it looks from the outside. Is it because of the spatial energy? Wang Xian's eyes lit up as he entered. Looking inside, he could see a large number of ruins. Only a few buildings were still intact, and they were shrouded by some energy. Wang Xian looked over and immediately flew inside. Wang Xian's true body appeared outside. He built a simple building and sat there, waiting quietly. Someone's here! When Wang Xian entered the sacred moon and flew forward, he saw two young men flying out. One of them had a horrifying wound on his body and was extremely weak. The moon pagoda isn't a place we can enter. It's too dangerous inside. I really don't know how that bunch of demons managed to enter the upper levels of the moon pagoda. The two of them spoke dejectedly. They took a glance at Wang Xian and continued to fly towards the exit cautiously. Moon pagoda? Wang Xian murmured when he heard them. Because this void divine dragon body was weaker, he couldn't use the soul-sucking power. Therefore, Wang Xian didn't know what was going on inside and could only explore by himself. Wang Xian scanned his surroundings and came to the nearest building that was still intact. The entire sacred moon was huge. Not far from the entrance, there was a complete building. It looked like a courtyard and a small river. However, the courtyard and the small river were shrouded by a magical array. They weren't destroyed, but it was difficult for others to enter. Wang Xian came to the front of the building and flew above to take a look. The magical array has shrouded this place without any blind spots. I can't enter at all. Wang Xian looked over and raised his eyebrows slightly. According to his senses, unless a powerful force was used to break into this courtyard, no one would be able to enter. Otherwise, there was no way out. In order to break this magical array, one would probably need the strength of a third or fourth order universe lord. Even space attribute cultivators would be able to block this magic formation. As a universe with the space attribute, the experts here would naturally guard against space attribute space teleportation. Therefore, only those with great strength could enter. Otherwise, they could forget about entering. It was a dead zone. However, Wang Xian guessed that there might be some decent treasures in this courtyard. As the entrance of the sacred moon, many powerful forces would place some items at the entrance to showcase their strength. This item might not be the best, but it wouldn't be too bad either. Chapter 3942. Wang Xian frowned as he looked at the area shrouded by the array. After a closer look, he couldn't do anything about it. Although Enlai could ignore the magical array, Wang Xian couldn't contact him now. They weren't in the same universe, so Wang Xian couldn't sense the Dragon Palace. Therefore, he couldn't summon Enlai over. Before stepping into the sword and sorcery universe, Wang Xian and Enlai had an agreement to contact each other once every 10,000 years. At that time, he would set up a demonic soul altar, and Enlai would find a new demonic soul altar before teleporting over. There were still 5,000 to 6,000 years before Wang Xian could contact Enlai. However, Wang Xian wasn't in a hurry. He might stay in this area for another 5,000 to 6,000 years. When Enlai came, he could let him take the treasures away. As he thought about it, Wang Xian continued to fly in. As he flew further in, there were collapsed buildings everywhere. However, there was a building ahead that was unusually eye-catching. It was a pagoda. The entire pagoda occupied about 1/10 of this space. The pagoda stood in the center and was more than 100,000 meters tall. The entire pagoda was divided into more than a dozen levels. Wang Xian looked at the pagoda before sweeping his gaze across the surroundings. He wandered around the area. It was either a collapsed building or an area covered by a magic array. He couldn't enter areas shrouded by magic arrays. This pagoda was the most complete one. He moved and flew into the pagoda. There was only one entrance to the pagoda. Wang Xian stood at the entrance and looked up. The words, "Pagoda of the Moon," were engraved on the entrance. He moved and flew in. 111. The moment he entered, a wave of majestic energy rushed over. This energy contained the 10 attributes of the sword and sorcery universe. Wang Xian was astonished by the intensity of the energy. This level of energy intensity is comparable to the powerful treasured lands occupied by the pinnacle races in the Nine-Source universe. Wang Xian murmured. This forbidden land, the Moon of the Void, could be considered a pinnacle race in the Nine-Source universe. The pagoda of the moon is full. Get out now. At this moment, those who weren't strong enough should get out. However, just as Wang Xian entered, a cold voice was heard immediately. He was taken aback for a moment, and he looked inside. The first floor of the Moon Tower was spacious enough. However, at this moment, the first level was densely packed with young and middle-aged men seated cross-legged. At the door, a young man stared at him coldly, full of warning. Wang Xian's eyes flickered as he looked at the ground. The floor of the hall on the first floor of the Moon Tower was made of a type of square-shaped magic stone. Each sorcerer's stone was the same size, but it was divided into 10 attributes. There was a powerhouse sitting cross-legged on top of each sorcerer's stone. The majestic energy was coming from beneath the sorcerer's stone. Seeing this, Wang Xian had a slight understanding of the situation. There were thousands of these sorcerer's stones on the first floor of the Moon Tower. Everyone occupied a magic stone to cultivate. The number of people here was already full. If they wanted to enter and cultivate again, they might have to show some of their strength. Moreover, Wang Xian was a space attribute cultivator. If he wanted to cultivate, he would have to occupy a space attribute magical stone. Looking around, Wang Xian fixed his eyes on the cultivators of the space attribute. In the entire hall, most of them were at least level 6 universe venerables. It was especially so for the 9 attribute experts outside the space. Most of them were at least level 7 or level 8 universe venerables. Within the sacred moon, there was a limit to how many people could enter. There was an age limit. Those who could enter could become cultivators with great potential. Those who were very old and had not broken through for a long time couldn't enter. Wang Xian's eyes fell on a level 5 universe venerable with a space attribute cultivator. He instantly went to the sorcerer's stone where the young man was. That young man was cultivating. When he saw Wang Xian, his eyes immediately turned cold. "You're asking for it. Are you challenging me?" He stared at Wang Xian. With a wave of his arm, a sharp sword appeared in his hand. "This position is mine." Wang Xian looked at him and said plainly. "Fine." The young man stared coldly at Wang Xian. With a move, he flew out. "Let me see what makes you think you have the right to snatch my position." A voice sounded in Wang Xian's ears. Wang Xian swept his gaze across the surroundings. With a swift move, he followed closely behind and flew out. Clearly, there was an unspoken rule here. To occupy a position, one had to go outside to spar. Only the winner had the right. "Go to hell!" The moment Wang Xian appeared, countless sharp swords swarmed towards him. They were ruthless and didn't give him any time to react. Wang Xian saw countless sharp swords flying towards him. He swung the sword in his hand. "Sword shield!" With a low grunt, a sword shield appeared around him and easily blocked the attacks of the sharp swords. "TSK, unity of swords!" In the sky, the young man snorted coldly. With a wave of his arm, a sharp sword slashed towards Wang Xian. The surrounding sharp swords merged with the sharp sword and slashed towards Wang Xian. Wang Xian looked over. With a flash, he disappeared and appeared on the right of the young man. "Teleportation, I know it too. Unity of man and sword." The young man's eyes lit up. His figure appeared on the huge sharp sword in a creepy manner. At the same time, he teleported with the sharp sword. Oh! Wang Xian sensed the energy fluctuation around him and raised his eyebrows. The sharp sword in his hand immediately slashed towards the position behind him. Bam! In the next moment, his sword radiance collided with the huge sword that the young man had condensed. You actually sensed where I teleported to? The young man narrowed his eyes when he saw Wang Xian's attack coming at him the moment he appeared. A vigilant look appeared on his face. In a battle between space attribute cultivators, those with strong senses would have a great advantage. This was because the opponent could sense where you teleported to and attack that position the moment you teleported. Alright, I'm not going to play with you anymore. Wang Xian looked at the young man and said plainly. He continued to teleport and appeared on the left of the young man. Sword cross! At the same time, he swung the sharp sword in his hand and shouted. A huge cross sword was formed and slashed towards the young man. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.